Clash of the Classics.
Hey everyone, welcome to Horsepower for an Hour. It's time for another episode of Clash of the Classics. Yet another week has passed. Chris, how you been?
You know, I've been doing pretty well. It's been a good summer, getting some work done and not too bad.
I'm digging looking at some of these old classic cars. Some of the research that we're supposed to be doing here for these vehicles has really made it pleasurable. I get a chance to go out and look at a lot of older stuff that I normally wouldn't be doing. Want a big thanks and a special thanks to Full Throttle Customs in Fillmore, California, for allowing us to look at a lot of their lineup. They've got just about every classic car you can possibly imagine. Ray McClellan out there is one of the top tuners in the country, and I often get a chance to go out and look at a lot of the older stuff. This week it's the 1967 Camaro Z28 battling the 1967 Chevelle SS 396, and this is going to be some fun. These battles are fueled by the largest automatic transmission network in the world. They are the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association, or simply the ATRA. But let's get started. We've talked about various first-gen Camaros before. In fact, we even talked about one last week. Well, today I want to showcase one model in particular. It's the 67 Z28 Camaro. Back in the late 60s, let me bring everybody up to speed here because there's a specific reason for the Z28, and then what is Z28? So let's talk about it. Back in the late 60s, the SCCA, or the Sports Car Club of America, was the premier racing showcase for pony cars. A lot of guys will remember that. Chevy really felt like they had to score big there because Mustang was putting a pretty serious hurt on not only them but everybody else. Ford was just kicking butt over everyone. Between 65 and 67, Mustang really had no serious competition other than that Barracuda. We talked about that a few weeks ago, and even though it was a few years away from becoming the icon it is today, it still wasn't what it needed to be. So Chevy's performance division created a Z28 package. Well, what in the heck is a Z28? That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Z20 is an RPO code, or a regular production option. Trans Am racers were production-based cars with engine displacements of 305 cubic inches or less. Chevy engineers worked some magic by adding a forged steel 283 crankshaft, and they stuffed that into a 327 small block engine, and they came up with a 302 cubic inch displacement engine to put into this RPO Z28. Again, the Z28 production option is a series of things that go into a car that make it a particular model. In this particular case, Z28. Large port Corvette heads, solid lifters, race cam, big Holley carburetor, and a tuned aluminum intake manifold, all together made for about 300 horsepower with 209 pound-feet of torque. Chevy had to build at least 1,000 units to comply with regulations, which they did, and the idea was to make the 302 part of the designated RPO code. Now, that RPO code, as we talked about a moment ago, turned out to be the most famous RPO code in history, and of course, we all know it today as the Z28. So in 67, it was so low-key that it wasn't advertised or even mentioned in any of the sales literature, and this was deliberate. Buyers had to be knowledgeable about the option, and then you had to ask for it specifically. So some may ask, well, why the secret? What was, why would you want to keep that on the DL, as the kids say today? Well, the whole idea was to claim the top spot in the Trans Am series so Chevy could advertise their superiority over Ford and their coveted Mustang. So the whole idea was, let's build a secret weapon, right? It's the ultimate Wile E. Coyote thing. We're going to build this secret, launch missile that we're going to finally overtake the king of the hill, which was the Ford Mustang. The Z28 package was an additional $400, and here's what the Z28 RPO designation consisted of. This is what it included. This is the following. The 302 that we just talked about with that steel crank in the 327. The F41 handling package. 15-inch tires on Corvette rims. A quick ratio manual steering gear. Muncie 4-speed, and then a mandatory $100 power front disc brake options. It was nothing more and nothing less. So you had those things. That's what made the Z28. Now, despite what some folks might try and claim, that was the entire Z28 package in 1967. Now, as time passed and the second gen came on, some things changed. But for the original 67 Z28, it wasn't advertised as a Z28. It was a secret weapon that Chevy was going to try to unseat Ford with in the SCCA. That's the whole idea behind it.
So they didn't really care that much about selling them to a mass market. It's
Correct.
just they wanted it for the Trans Am series.
Yeah, so that they could go out and they could dethrone Ford, dethrone the Mustang from being champion at the SCCA series. That was the whole idea. Now, anyone who's ever driven a Camaro with the original 302 will undoubtedly agree it was a blast. I mean, plenty of low-end grunt. But at around 4,000 RPM or higher, here's where this engine really becomes alive. It becomes a monster. During initial testing, engineers found that the car was at its best at around 7,500 RPM. So you're talking more than 7,000 RPMs is when this car really does its best. In first gear, it was best shifted at 63 miles an hour. So you're exceeding the maximum speed limit in first gear.
That is insanity.
Right. Second gear, 85. Third gear, 113 miles an hour. And then fourth gear at 125. Top speed in 1967, 145 miles an hour. Road and Track magazine said that if the all-new Z28 is not the bona fide race car, then we must confess we have never seen one.
No, that's a huge compliment.
Yeah. So, Chevy produced 602 units of them for sale, 0 to 60 in 7 seconds, quarter mile in 14.8 seconds, original MSRP $3,500. Take a guess at what a true original Chevy Z28 Camaro is valued at today.
Numbers matching and all that.
Yes.
I feel like even $100,000 is reaching very low.
Yeah. And
Quarter million?
Let me stop you right there. It's inestimable.
Really?
There is no number on it. It's inestimable.
So if I had one for some reason and I said, $500,000.
Oh, easily. Yeah. It's more in seven figures.
Wow.
I'm talking about an original 67 Z28 Camaro, one of the original 602 units, one of those original units. And if you have the one that Road and Track magazine actually tested, forget it, done. It's
not only are you retiring, your grandkids are retiring.
You need a sheik's wealth to buy it. But it's just, for me, it was really fun. I got a chance to go out and actually look at one of these cars. When you look at some of the stuff that Chevy the changes that they went through to try to dethrone Ford, how fun it was back then. The whole spirit of competition was done in a way that was fun as opposed to degrading and underhanded and smear campaigns. It was just, we're going to beat those guys as opposed to, being negative about it. It was the spirit of true fun competition.
Yeah, it's always a great thing when you can have the mentality of we need to be better than them versus we need to make them worse than us. You know
what? Very nicely put. Dude, that was awesome. Exactly. And that's what we suffer from today. Damn nice put. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good. And that is the mentality that it seems like we embrace today. In fact, we don't only embrace it, we seem to celebrate it.
Well, I mean, if you look at all the great modern inventions, any great modern invention at its core is birthed out of laziness, right? Because it's, I don't really want to wash my clothes by hand with a washboard, just put them in a machine, right? Mm-hmm. So in that mentality of give me convenience, there's a band, Dead Kennedys, they have an album called Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death. Mm-hmm. In that convenience mentality, it really is easier to pull someone down than pull yourself up.
Well, we certainly suffer from that in today's world.
I mean, what is it? It's the hermit crab that does that, right?
Yeah,
is it the hermit crab?
Yeah, it's it's the crawdad.
Crawdad.
Yep.
I don't know my biology very well, but either way, that's what they're notorious for.
Well, before we go any further, let's talk about the largest automatic transmission network on the planet. They are the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association, or the ATRA. ATRA makes our class of the classics possible. Nobody knows transmissions better than the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. There's no better place to be when your car is having a transmission problem than an authorized ATRA service provider. All right, let's talk about that Chevelle. Now, the SS 396 Chevelle took a few steps forward and then maybe a couple of steps backwards for 1967, and I'll explain what I'm talking about here in a moment. Some of the improvements over the 66 model were in the suspension and the handling area. And we've already talked about, in some detail I might add, that 60s models cars really suffered and struggled in the area of suspension. Chevy upgraded to lower profile F70 tires. They added front disc brakes, had improved front springs, kicked the stance out just slightly. The overall stability was better. Those were areas that it was improved in. The Hydromatic 400 transmission became an option for the first time in 1967. Some new federal regulations mandated a redesign on the steering column, and the factories had to add padding on the dashboard. And I remember this back in those days. But even with those upgrades, a lot of folks claim that the Chevelle's dash was still pretty boring when you compared it to a GTO. That I would probably agree with, because anything you compare to a GTO is going to probably pale.
Yeah, just forget about it, as they say.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'll go home now. But between 66 and 67, there were only a few minimal exterior changes. The bumper, the grille, and then a blacked out tail panel. The place where the car took a step backwards, in my opinion, was with the performance output. The 396 engine, the V8, the big block, was again standard, but horsepower was detuned from 325 to about 310. It was the L34 engine option. The L78 option was no longer listed in the sales brochures, but here's the thing. You had to be knowledgeable. You could order it as a dealer-installed option, and that was only for 1967. So the factory would no longer give it to you. But you could go to your nearest Chevrolet, store, any town Chevrolet, and say, I want to order this car. I'll pay you guys to pull the L34 out, and I want you to drop the L78 in. So you had to pay for that additionally, which was, I don't know what that would have been. It would have been pure labor in terms of the dealership. So don't know a lot of people would have done that, but to me, that's taking a step backwards in terms of the factory. They should have offered it. To this day, only 612 people ordered the L78 in 1967 as a dealer-installed option. Again, I don't know what they paid for that, but I do know that there are 612 cars out there that have a dealer-installed L78 engine, the 396. Imagine what those cars are worth. No, don't tell me. I'll ask you in a minute. But no matter how you slice it, the 67 Chevelle is cool. Many people prefer the 1966 model. I might be one of those people, but I do like the corners and some of the aesthetics on the 67. But it's difficult. It depends on what day it is and the color of the moon and so on and so forth. 66 or 67, heck, I'll take it. Sold to the guy over here on the microphone. Beautiful car with outstanding muscle appeal. Original MSRP, $3,200. 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds, quarter mile in 15 seconds. Today, the L34, which is all you could get in 67, it's worth right at about $80,000 to $100,000. I don't know what that L78 would be worth. I have no idea. I don't even know how to research it, but I'm sure that it's worth twice as much, maybe. Who knows? Maybe 3 times as much. But let's go with only with what the factory offered, which is the L34. That's the 310 horsepower version of this engine. That's worth between $80,000 and $100,000.
That's about what I would have guessed.
So between these two cars, 67 Chevelle SS 396 or the 67 Camaro Z28, the 302, shifting at red line 8,000 RPM. Which one you rolling with?
Do you even have to ask?
I don't even have to ask you. even though we're wheel hopping in the rear and the suspension in the rear Camaro is horrible, I think we're both rolling with the 1967 Z28.
It's got to be the Z28.
Yeah, there's just no way to argue against it. It's just such a cool car, and Chevy, what I guess made it really cool in terms of the storyline is that they were so wickedly hell-bent on dethroning Ford that it just makes it a fun story to cover. It's like, wow, I mean, I see this group of guys in a room with candles, no lights, so that no one, and it's this secretive, clandestine meeting where what do we got to do?
They have the Gregorian chants and the hoods on, right?
Yeah. Right, I know what we'll do. We'll take a 327 and we'll take a 283 and we'll put the two together and we'll, and you hear all this, and they're whispering because we got to dethrone Ford at the SEC. It just makes for a very, very fun story. But you can go on to our website, horsepoweronline.com, or visit us here on our YouTube channel. Let us know which car you like. Today's Class of the Classics, made possible by the largest automatic transmission network in the world. They're the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association, or simply the ATRA. Next time your car is having a transmission problem, head on over to atra.com to find an authorized transmission service provider near you. That's it, folks. We'll see you next week.